Since the dawn of humanity, us as people, like we've always been in different tribes and different languages, and we never really, and it was hard for us to communicate with each other like culturally. But there was one thing that like you can easily communicate with another person, and that's music. And that's what I thought would be an interesting topic to bring today. So welcome, guys, to the Take One podcast. And I have two musicians, and we're going to be talking about music and the music industry. Guys, if you guys like to introduce yourselves.
Okay. Hi, I'm Iliana Lambe, and I'm a musician, songwriter, all of that in the Tampa Bay area, originally from Greece. And here I am in the States living the American dream.
Mm.
Hi, I'm Gasp Jesse, and I'm from Nashville, living in Florida for a little bit. And yeah, I love it. Do music, produce, mix, master, sing, play 20 instruments, and been at it for a minute. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's interesting because you guys come from different areas. You came from Greece and you came from Tennessee. When you guys make music, do you guys bring some cultural influence from those areas?
I would say definitely in Greece, we have a traditional instrument called bouzouki, and the way it's played, you have a very you would know alternative picking style when you strum. So I try to incorporate a lot of elements from Greek music, Greek culture into my music, but I think it does have a very certain American twist on it, given the fact it's mainly blues. There's some indie Americana in there, but that's the type of style that I go to. But I would say, yeah, definitely there is some Greek influence. Maybe it's just because I'm
From
doing
Greece.
yeah.
But no, I mean, it's natural. I mean, to create something based on your environment, right?
Absolutely,
I mean, like,
yeah.
it's just when you just, I mean, it surrounds you. And like you said, in Greece, I mean, I don't think in the States we're not exposed to a lot of Greek music. So there's some things that, like, especially a lot of Eastern European and even Western Asian music, we're not really exposed to that. So something that you can bring differently is definitely going to make you stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about yourself, man?
I've lived all over, but I kind of crash landed in Nashville to really hit it hard for stage time and to perform a lot. But I kind of just take in a lot of electronic stuff from I've been producing since I was 14. Really had a lot of love for like Flume, Skrillex, Tiesto, and all those big dogs in the DJ industry. But I always was a jazz musician, primarily like bass guitar and piano. So I always felt that yearning to go back to that. So when I went to Nashville, I kind of scratched all of that, but used the knowledge of how to produce sounds into sound design into what I do now. It's a mix of like electronic rock, essentially, with jazz elements and 3/4, 6/8 time signature stuff like that. So
Now, did you teach yourself that, or is that something you had to learn from people?
I taught myself how to produce. Just took myself to the old hard knock school, and just took a lot of time. I took off the past 2 years from my career to just, 3 years now, to just produce every single day and just use my savings, and would wake up really late and stay up to like 3, 4 in the morning and produce, sometimes overproducing a song, but just to essentially do it all myself.
It must have been overwhelming the first time, like, because for you, when you
was.
approach something, and like, again, like, since you had to learn it by yourself, like, you had, I mean, what did you use? Did you use like YouTube, or did you use like some kind of what reference points did you use?
YouTube and some electronics theory books on how to sound design, how to use your equalizers, compressors, granulizers, all these cool tools that are available online that we used to have to do with more like analog effects that are now digitally at our disposal. So yeah, I just would do that. And a lot of it you can kind of teach yourself, like playing an instrument.
Yeah.
Like you can play guitar with a certain picking style, and as you play, you could be either more of like a Pink Floyd guitarist or more of a Jimi Hendrix guitarist and put your thumb on top of the guitar. Same thing with producing. You kind of learn your own ways. I always look at it like there's like 10 different ways to get to a certain point in producing. There really is. Like,
I'm glad you mentioned Jimi Hendrix, because I know there's always like a rivalry for the people who like they learned from somebody, and then the people who learn from themselves. And sometimes the people who are classically trained, they'll kind of look down. But someone like Jimi Hendrix, who's one of the greatest guitar players, I would say, who ever lived, and I feel like that's almost undisputed. He taught himself.
Yeah.
And I think that's fascinating. And he did stuff in the guitar that was never even thought
Never
about.
even thought of.
No. And you think sometimes when you do something like things like that you don't have anybody. Like you're able to have more of a free reign.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Iliana?
I am also self-taught.
Okay.
I just picked up the piano, my keyboard one day. I was like around 5, 6 years old, and I had gained consciousness recently that there was a piano in the living room, and I was like, "Whoa, what's this? Do we have like C, D, E, F?" And so it began, and I just sat down, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. I want to start, doing it." And so my mom noticed that I really, really liked music at a young age, and she was like, "Oh, let's get you some lessons." I hated the lessons. I did not like it one bit, and it kind of, that like condition that happens when you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go wash the dishes," and then someone's like, "Go wash the dishes," and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Nah, I don't want to do it." But that was kind of the same thing. It's such a weird phenomenon, but yeah, that was what it was like. And so my mom was like, "Okay, I'm done. I want to go ahead, go do music." And so when I quit the lessons, which I was only in for like a month or two, and I really, really just fell in love with it more because I could really make it my own. Nobody was saying, "Oh, you have to practice piano."
Right.
And they were like kind of crushing the enthusiasm I had for it.
Yeah,
So
because they make it almost like a military schedule. You have to practice so much a day. You have to play these particular songs, and those are usually like the basic like Ode to Joy. They're like very like
hot cross
chopped.
buns.
Hot cross
Yeah,
buns.
basically, and it's like to the point that like people want gratification in their work, right? And you get something that like like you're not playing that for nobody. You're just like, "Yo, sit down. I got some fire over here."
Yeah,
like
spit on that.
And you're playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, like you know what I'm saying, like. it kind of takes away the joy a little bit because it's like, "Yo, I got some fire, girl." Dun, 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 dun,
Check me
dun.
out, guys.
Yeah.
Hot cross bun. Yeah, I know. But that was kind of how it was. That was my first instrument, piano. And then I had seen America's Got Talent, and there was a girl, she was playing ukulele on it. Grace Vanderwall, I believe her name is, yeah. And I was like, "What is that little instrument? That looks so cute." And so then at like 7 or 8 years old, I started playing the ukulele and taught myself that. Then it was guitar shortly after, because I mean, everybody. I feel like guitar is like a base. If
That's
you're gonna be like a
go-to.
songwriter, you have to
It's
know.
the
Like,
class.
it's that A minor pentatonic scale.
The A
You know that, you'll be okay.
pentatonic.
But yeah, from there I picked up a couple other instruments. I had a bouzouki that I had brought with me from Greece, and I mean, I was looking through my closet. I was like, "Oh my gosh, the Holy Grail is here!" And I started playing bouzouki, and a couple other ones along the way, violin.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, 20 instruments. That's insane. I'm sitting here like, gee, like he knows
Yeah.
his stuff, guys.
Starts with a couple.
Yeah, because you definitely had to go all in. Did you guys have like a particular moment when you guys were like doing a song? You're like, "You know what? Fuck it. I want to do this for the rest of my life."
Oh my god, yeah.
Like the pivoting point where you're like, I want to do.
When you're like, because for you to put like to say for you you learn 20 instruments.
Yeah.
You're not doing that as a passing. You decided to dedicate yourself, because I don't think anyone's learning 20 of anything with just on a passing.
Yeah.
Did you guys have like this particular moment that you were just like?
Mine was in Nashville a couple years ago. I put music down to be a traveling nuclear test engineer for 8 years, and I was just like, I'm just gonna make money and just do this. And out of high school, did that, and it was just a point where I was just working, making money, and I was like, I'm not happy. And you got to pay the bills and everything, but I was like, I just lost friends. Years went on. I just seen life short, and I was kind of ended up in Nashville in a string of really funny events. Not when I moved there officially, but on a visiting trip. And I had a trip to go there to do a photo shoot, and I met some friends, and they were like, "Hey, my buddy's got a band, and he's got a bunch of equipment downstairs." He's like, I heard that you used to play music. And I was like, yeah, I'd put it down for a while. He's like, but they're like, come downstairs and play. And we did, and got really drunk and just messed up. And we were just rip scooting on a bunch of instruments, and I just started crying.
That's when the real inspiration comes.
Yeah, I was like, I miss this.
Mm.
Like, this made me so happy.
Right.
And forever at that moment, I called my ex and said, sell the Xbox. I was doing that in my spare time, working out. I was like, I want to just make music.
Right.
And that was
Because we
when I
do
was
so
like,
many
yeah.
things that like involves our mind, but we very rarely do stuff that involves our souls.
Yeah,
Ooh.
exactly.
Yo,
Dude,
clip that one. Put that in
one's-
the front of the pod. That one's good.
Facts.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, for me,
Facts.
I would say, I mean, when I was 6 years old, like, okay, yeah, take her seriously right now. But right then, when I was like, oh my gosh, music, I can create this. It's not a drawing. It's not something that you can see. It's something you experience when it enters you. It's just such a gorgeous thing. It's
Mhm.
so beautiful. It's just pure art, and it comes from you.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
not from your pen. It's what you put down in music. When you make something that gives the ears an experience, it gives the soul an experience. So
Yeah.
when I started, I work in a recording studio as a guitar technician, and when I was there, I was just like, wow, I see all these musicians come through. I see them doing their gigs. I want to start doing that. So I was asked to be in a little showcase with the studio. And from there, I got up on stage. There was probably like, I don't know, like 60 to 80 people. I couldn't see, the lights were really bright.
Mhm.
And I sat down. I sang an original song. And I just felt within me like, oh my gosh, I could do this for the rest of my life.
Wow.
It was right there, and I was like, I see it clear as day. I wanna just do it. It makes me so happy. It makes me overjoyed to share my skill, my instrument, my music with other people.
Yeah.
And so, right there, I was pretty much sold. Another factor, because like I'm a student at St. Petersburg College, and I'm down the medical route. I'm studying to be a holistic doctor, and that's very time consuming. So during the semester, I was kind of pushing music aside, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I need to feed my soul. This is so important to me. And I just sat down it was like 2, 3 in the morning, and I put on like a backing track,
Yeah.
and I just got my guitar out, and I was just like playing along with some scales, some riffs that I was just coming up with, and I'm like, hold on, guys, it's everything I want to do. And it was at that point that I'm like, I do love the studying medicine. I do love, the human body, how it works, studying those functions, studying how to treat it. But in the end, you can help people, you can heal people even
Through music.
with your own music.
Oh, I believe that absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, even in plants,
Yeah.
they've done studies where, like, depending on what kind of music you play in plants, they grow faster.
Yeah.
That's right.
Like,
Certain
from playing
frequencies.
crystals and
Yeah.
metal music, they tend to grow faster. It's interesting you said about like performance, because I feel like everyone remembers their first performance.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
it's like you're nervous. It's nerve wracking, but like. And I don't think that 100% ever goes away. I don't know for you guys, because like anytime if I perform like on stage in theater, because
Yeah.
when I perform in theater, there's always like this nerve wracking thing, especially when it's around you're like 5 minutes to call, and you're like in this
True.
thing. You're like, oh my god, I suck. What's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you go there, you just get like this almost like this tunnel vision. You're like you're ready to go, and you just
Mhm.
do it. But it's interesting to like. That nervousness almost never goes away, but like you learn to like deal with it in a sort of.
Mm.
Yeah. The nervousness, I feel like it's essentially we all cope with it in a certain way. I like to think of it more as excitement. People are like, "Do you get nervous? Like it's a packed night here or whatever venue, or
Mhm.
you're headlining tonight?" And I'll be like, "Well, yes and no," because I'm like, I know I've done it before, and part of me is just like whatever jitters I've gotten, I just know I'm just more excited, and it doesn't really click until I'm on the stage, and then it all kind of just drops away. And I'm like, I'm here, because there's a nervousness of like the bandmates, are they showing up?
Right.
The practices we've had, was it enough? Will the guitarist hit that break and pause when they're supposed to? Will the effects pedals work? Will the mic actually sound okay? That's why I started bringing my own mics. Little things like that. Once I kind of mitigated all those other possible negatives that could happen on stage. That helped as well, like to get over it. And I was like, no, we've got it. It's
Yeah,
gonna be fine.
because sometimes like just some things that just happen outside, you like
Yeah.
you know that you're controlled, that you have to like just roll with it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like the audience, they just want to see a show.
Yeah.
And the best thing about performing live is like when you just like feed into the audience's energy and you know that they love it.
That is the best.
That's like I feel like one of those joys you can't really buy.
No,
Like
you can't.
like do you guys have ever had like a mishap? Like what was like any crazy thing that happened like when you guys were performing?
I was about to go on stage, and the neck of my acoustic guitar snapped in half.
Good God.
And so thankfully,
How does that happen?
I don't know. That was just some freak accident. I'm like, oh.
Strings too tight. It snapped inward.
It just cracked right
It's
there.
just committed seppuku, just right
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, what are
Hey.
you doing? Like, right before the show, come on. So I had to borrow somebody else's guitar. Thank you if you're watching.
Was it a legit guitar or was it like Guitar Hero? Or like
That's clutch.
A little air guitar, actually.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it was pretty good. It wasn't my own, but it worked out. There was that. I've had issues with electrical work too.
Yeah.
Oh, that always happens. It's like
That's a happening.
it's
It happens.
fine, all jolly good up until like right then when you have to like plug in your amp and
Yep.
actually do a show.
Mm.
It's just the curse we musicians have.
I was doing a show at the Bluebird Cafe, and if you know anything about Nashville, it is the most sought after venue. I finally got a slot to perform there, and Post Malone just played there 2 weeks ago. Just everybody plays there, and they do smaller writers round and smaller indie artist nights. Sometimes that you can get picked on if you apply like months in advance. Got on there. I just bought an MC505 Boss loop station. It's a 5-channel loop station. I can run like a and then do some guitars and do some and it all stacks up, makes a song. And they said I could use it. Most people were just doing acoustic guitars, and I did a bass guitar. I had an electric bass guitar and a loop station. The loop station malfunctions because I put the mic on it, and it does some. I just got it. I had no idea what the fuck was happening, and it was just. It malfunctioned. I can only do 1 channel loop, so I just essentially just looped just like a beatboxing thing with my guitar, and that's
like an old school '80s kind of beatbox.
yeah. And I was like looking, and then the whole crowd, it was packed, and that venue sits like 150 people to the wall, and people were at the door, and I was like, this is a lot for me, and the whole place was quiet, just me on stage, and I was like, this is a lot of pressure, and a lot of good things came through that night. I made it work. I did this original song called Green Envy, and I posted about it, but it was okay. I forgot half the lyrics and just made them up on the spot. So I just had to improv. Sometimes you have to
So that's
improv
feel like yeah.
That is a
at that
gift.
point because they don't know. They're like, oh, it's an original artist, original song. So at that point, just go with it. It's going to sound worse at that point if you just don't sing anything or do anything. And I was like, at this point, I had all these harmonies that I had memorized to go with it and more sounds, more things to do with the guitar that just weren't going to work. So
Now, when you were improving that, did you like wind up coming across something like, you know what, I could use this for the original or something like
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually did. And I thought that was cool in the moment. That does happen. It happens in the studio when you're writing. You kind of come across some things. You're like, oh, that sounds really good. I like that. And they're like, oh, let's put that in the original. That's why I like to sit on songs longer now instead of pushing them out too fast because you never know. You're like,
Right.
Yeah.
I had that conversation, but in regards to scripts and when it comes to directors, that like they'll have like unfinished scripts where they'll just put in a can, and because they got like some kind of writer's block at the moment, and like they're feeling like, oh, I can't go anywhere with this right now, and it sometimes you need to be in the right space to do it, and so what they'll do is like they'll put it away. Did you guys ever experience that, and how do you guys overcome writer's block?
Ooh,
tough
actually,
question.
I have a song coming out August 8th called Heroin, Heroin, Heroin like the drug, and then Heroin like the female hero.
It's great.
And thank you. And honestly, I started writing it when I was around 15. I had like the idea, but I left it alone. And I was like, oh, that's kind of like a cool like play on words. And then I revisited it because I was back in the studio, and they had like this like 1902 honky tonk piano that somebody had donated. It was completely out of tune, but it sounded super like haunted and scary. And I'm like, I could write some blues on this actually. That could be kind of cool. And so I sat down and I was like, oh, but what song is there like that's like bluesy that I have on piano? And I was like, Heroin, Heroin. Oh. And so I started playing it, and it wasn't finished. It was just like verse or two, I had like a vague idea of what I wanted for it. When I started playing it, my producer was like, yo, that's some
Hey,
good stuff, man. You
that's
gotta,
good.
yeah, you gotta start, you know, writing about that. You have to, you know, build that. That could be kind of cool. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
man, I don't know.
There's like this album that's coming out. Does it have like a general theme through it?
Yes, the album will probably be out later this year. This is just a single, but the album tells the story of the rise and a fall of a rock star
Mhm.
who kind of gets to the place where he or she wants to be, and then realizes like when they're at the top, like it's so lonely up here. I've worked so hard for this, but at what expense? Like I've given up my mind, I've given up my body, and here I am just at the top, but is it really worth it? And so my album there goes through like there's a lot of plays with the drugs. I don't do drugs. I haven't shot heroin before, guys. So but
Allegedly.
hey guys. But yeah, so this album, yeah, it's basically the falls the falls and the problems with stardom, because everybody wants it. We all want to
Yeah.
be famous and stuff, but and yeah, at the end of the day, like once you have it, is it all you ever wanted?
Mhm.
If you're not going to use it for good,
Mm.
or are you going to get swayed while you're climbing to the top? It's a very narrow path, but I mean, if you're focused, if you have a goal, like with me, I want to be at a place of influence
Mm.
so that I can help people.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be at a place of influence and then have people fall further. I mean, that's what I want to be. I want to be a doctor of music. So I'm thinking, I have a couple names in mind for the album, but I think it would be called like the Medicine Cabinet,
Mm.
Nice.
because yeah, it's kind of like untouched. It's kind of just there. And a lot of the songs in it have like drug or pharmaceutical references in the name.
'Cause that shit's
So,
dope.
Yeah.
yo,
That should be the tagline.
yo,
Dope.
that's a bar, honestly. Yeah, we could make that happen.
That's a
courtesy
bar.
of Giovanni.
That
That could be good. Yeah. So,
some.
yeah.
Some throw on.
You know what? I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but I think you'd be interested in the movie Whiplash. I don't know if you've ever
That's
seen
one of my favorites. Top
yeah,
5.
because I feel like it's not a one for one for what you're explaining to me, but general themes, I think you really appreciate that film.
That band director was my band director. Sorry,
Really?
Mr. Hooten. He wasn't as bad, but you would smack us down when we missed our dynamics or the legatos or everything. It was brutal. But I thank him for that. I did trombone since I was 12, and then bass guitar and jazz band through the high school. So, but that was a lot like it is. Drummers in the jazz genre have to be so precise. They have to have those BPMs memorized. It was a brilliant movie.
So
Very
let me
accurate.
ask you about this then, since you've seen it. The ending of it?
Mm-hmm.
Could you consider that a happy ending or a sad ending? Because I
Happy.
see multi. Oh, really?
Oh, happy. Yeah.
Okay.
As him, as the drummer. Also, I can't think of the actor's name. Love that
Oh,
actor.
I guess, yeah.
He was in the new Top Gun. I can't think of his name. It was Goose's son or whatever. I love that actor. He portrayed it so well. Coming out of the crash and everything that happened. Came into the final. That's what I remember happened anyways. It was he got to perform with his bloody hands, or he's all
Yeah.
tattered up.
No, that's a good
And,
movie.
I've seen this in my Instagram reels,
Oh,
actually.
oh,
So
yeah.
I have seen this
On
movie.
Instagram.
Yeah.
But coming from my drummer in Nashville, we were all messed up one night. He was like, man, I was like, what do you want, Brady? What do you want out of everything in the world? He was like, I want to be the greatest drummer ever. And I feel like a lot of drummers have so much ambition, and he's brilliant at it too. All the paradiddles and all the things he can do. It's just great. Awesome drummer. So I look at that and I compare that to Whiplash. They're drummers, and it's just true.
It's how much you're willing to sacrifice for
Yeah.
greatness. Because
Yeah.
anyone could just coast through and just listen. Because that's something I wanted to talk about. That, for an example, like how Nickelback wrote the song, like "How You Remind Me." Essentially, what he wanted to make a hit. He listened to every single. I really, yeah.
Ooh, Nickelback, is that you?
Nickelback, Pennyback. No, yeah.
Yeah, but he listened to a bunch of hits and comprised it based on the songs he was listening to,
Mm-hmm.
and he got all these acclimates. And it's so how much do you listen to make a hit, or do you even worry about that?
I don't think artists should chase fame, and I think that's the biggest problem with the industry right now. I think we should stop. And I would try to chase fame right out of high school, and it just didn't work. And that's not why I came to Nashville. I didn't try to chase fame. I was just chasing pure passion. I was like, if anyone likes it, I love it. And if I had 2 people nodding their heads in the crowd, I was happy. I was satisfied.
Yes.
You know. And I think with that, it can be a play on things. You can make just about anything and it could go successful. We're in this TikTok media era, which I think is crazy. I always think of like the comparison of Tom York from Radiohead. If he was in today's market trying to make it, would he be posting constant videos of himself singing just for views? And he wouldn't. He's just an awkward person. A lot of us musicians can be real awkward. We don't want to do that. I think it takes out a lot of the artistic element of that.
Right. I feel like this modern time for music, it's both like a blessing and a curse because what you have now is like now you have stuff like Spotify, YouTube, where anyone can do this, but at the same time, anybody can do this. So you have to try to stand out against millions of people now. Because back then it was just like if you were connected with the industry, that's as far as people were going to hear your music. But now it's like literally everyone, especially something like TikTok, where like you basically have 10 seconds to impress somebody.
Yeah, and not even that. It's like 3 seconds to 6 seconds. It's your catching point. You got to catch an eye and then hold them.
Yeah.
Or they're gone. Like you get your free advertisement gone because I'll just scroll all day. You got your doom scrollers. And, you know, I've been ashamed to say I've done that. I think we all are at this point. Had down moments or just breaks at work. We'll just be like, oh, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just going to scroll through this app. And, oh, okay, cool. They're playing a violin behind their back, or wow, they're producing with their toes on a computer, or whatever.
But how much do you even remember, like scrolling through your phone?
Yeah, like the hours just go by. And like, where am I?
Yeah, sometimes what I do is like, sometimes I just straight up delete them when I'm like, I really need to focus on something. Because it's not only like a time waster, it's also a killer of ambition. Because if you just do that hours and hours, you're not gonna want to do anything. You know, you get tired just scrolling.
Yeah. It really makes you lose that motivation. That's why I'm like, I'm not going to touch my phone. Like, I'm sorry, guys, if I'm not responding to you, but I'm not going to touch my phone until I've done something productive. If I've gone to the gym, if I've composed, if I've written some lyrics for a song. Yeah. It's like, it almost is like a little reward almost. Right. So I have to have that because God knows we are human and we get carried away scrolling on the Instagram reels and stuff like that. So
it's built like a lottery machine. You'll just, you know, it gives you little perks or whatever. Now they give you little things. You got your ads now. It's all algorithmically based. It is not really the best thing for creative minds because music is creative. It's being creative. It's taking the inner child and healing it and putting it out on tape and telling stories the best you can. And you can't really do that if you're bracketed in to say, oh, they want you to put out a 2.5 minute song now. That's what they want. That's the current industry. They want you to do a singles market. They don't like albums anymore.
No, they don't.
They're like, put out a single and we'll make it a smashing hit. And then they'll dump millions behind a lot of these A-lister artists on top of that. Like, I know Ed Sheeran's Bad Habits, I think they dumped anywhere from 6 to 16 million on that song. That's why it was this trending song. And it's a good song. It is. Fits the 4x4 bar, typical, you know, pop song, you know.
It's Ed.
But it's still, you don't hear people that came out with these time changes like the Beatles did. You don't hear a lot of things like you used to that really would mesmerize and change up things.
It's the problem is like they want to get you the attention for that time. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is people sometimes they listen what's happening, like what's currently popular right now, and they just coast through it. But the only thing is it's hard to stay relevant afterwards because, you know, sounds change. So like if you guys were like, what do you guys like define as like the best decade for music?
Oh God. I would say the 70s. I would say
BC?
the 70s.
Yes,
BC.
of course. Banging on my rock.
Rock.
Yeah.
Anytime before the internet was big, I would say. Because that was before a lot of things were just kind of tilting and changing. And I would also say somewhere in like the early 2000s, that was another big hit. I would say 70s and early 2000s, because then you had a lot of electronic producers that were coming out doing things you just couldn't do back then. Like you could make a sound pan left to right really quick, or just all these crazy things with headphones and stereo shaping that you can do now, which was really hard to do. Like I remember them explaining how they would do like a sound effect, and it was a reverse cymbal. And they would have to do that by literally taking the analog tape and rolling it backwards and then re-recording it in a 70s version analog studio. So now we can just do it in a blink of an eye on like Ableton, FL Studio, or any digital audio workstation. So you have stuff like that to look at. So you're like, that's really cool. And it can kind of like paint a different picture. I like to think of music as painting. You're an artist, right? And the final product, the song, is the end of the painting. And no matter what, you can paint it however you want with digital audio software. Or you can always go to a producer and they can help you paint it. But you have the opportunity to do everything from the beginning to end. So I do like that idea where music is now, where you can do that. Like Tame Impala, same thing. For his whole first album, essentially by himself, Kevin Parker out of Australia. And artists like that will go into a software, sit down, sing a whole song, and finish it. And you couldn't do that back then. You'd have to have like 20, 30 people touch a track.
Yeah.
I don't even saw the original music boards they used to have by then for producers,
Oh my
because
God.
I know somebody who owns one of those, and it's like it's basically this entire
Yeah.
room.
With
You'll have like
buttons,
100
Yeah.
plugins, everything. Yeah.
And now I asked him, how much do you use that still? Like, he's like, all this shit is obsolete. You just use my laptop, and that's essentially
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, I mean, the music I listen to is generally older. I really love meaningful songs. I like songs that tell stories. So, lyric wise, because I consider myself to be a lyricist more than I consider myself to be a musician, I think that where I lie is kind of like poetry with music. So, it is in sense like a painting. I like what you said about that because I mean, storytelling is something that I really love incorporating with my music.
Yeah.
So as far as that, with meaningful songs that spoke to you, that make you feel something that you can relate to, I would say anywhere like the 40s to 60s. I like that old time, like those old blues, you know?
Era.
I also love just like 80s rock and
Oh,
stuff like that. Because like
Yeah.
that music-wise for me, I was like, oh yeah, gets me pumped.
It's interesting you said about that, because I agree with you 100%, because I feel like when you try to make a statement or a point, and if someone is in your opposition, they're going to instantly block you out.
Yeah.
Usually, regardless how you do it. But
Yeah.
if you make it a song, usually for some reason it just connects with someone better.
Yeah.
You get to not only just listen to that person, you get to experience with that person
Experience it.
Yeah.
what it felt during that time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I feel like that's something magical from music that I don't believe anything else can
do.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really what brings people together because you can have somebody
Yeah.
who you don't necessarily like. You can have somebody that you don't, you know, care too much about, but it's their taste in music. Like if you're like, oh, but who do you listen to? And they're like, say your favorite artist, and you're like, well, yeah, you know what? You actually get some respect because you can connect with somebody on that musical level.
Yeah.
I mean, you ever have like a jam sesh so good that you're just like, that was spiritual, man. That was like divine. So it's I don't know how to describe it. I could talk about music for hours, but I just don't know how to put it into words because it's just something so metaphysical, something outside of our like perception because there's so many layers to it. The frequencies, what it says to you. I mean, you can have something with no lyrics and you can have something with lyrics, and both will equally make you feel something.
Right.
Both will speak to you.
I always said to myself that like our music and to extend art is just it's just an expression for when words aren't enough, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just us like just the English vocabulary, like there's just not words to explain how we feel and like what we're going through right now.
Yeah.
And that's why like music, like sometimes it's like a note, like just like certain notes just like can just hit you a certain way. And like there is that huge appeal because someone like, for example, Queen, that like he can get people from South Africa to Japan, people who like culturally do not really interact with each other.
Yeah.
Both feel a certain thing listening to that.
It's unanimous.
It connects them with all the Beatles, especially.
Yeah.
The Beatles are like how they changed music. I mean, that's almost like something that you almost will never see again.
No.
Like with the Beatles.
They made people come together. I mean, what can you say?
Like I wanted to hear your thoughts on this because originally the first album from the Beatles, they really didn't really like it that much but they knew if they put something out that was good for radio, and they got a lot of attention and money, then they can do the stuff that they really wanted to do.
Yeah,
That's when "Shake It Up, Baby,"
Yeah.
and that song, they were really like, young when they did that song. That's a good question because they did it smart because then they got label backing and well, at least they've got money to push towards their other stuff. And music now is so expensive.
Yeah.
So I do think about it like that. That is a positive for them, at least jumping to stardom from that album. I don't know. Because some people living in Nashville, I just saw struggle after struggle.
Yeah.
The most beautiful talent, and they'd be bartending or they would be
Yes.
waitressing or busing at a hotel, whatever, just to make it through to the next day and then stay up late in a studio at their home or with a friend to try to get something out that might be efficient enough to put out towards labels. So I don't know. It is a different industry. It's changing. It is. And so it's an interesting question.
Especially something like Nashville, where like you have, I know, like that's probably one of the biggest places for music. That in Atlanta, like you're gonna have competition everywhere, and like some people, like they have the potential to be really good, but sometimes they don't even something that's missing, like a cadence or essentially just like lyrically or something like that. And what happens is some of them they drop it or they resort to being like ghostwriters, because that happens a lot too, where like they just didn't have even the right stage presence being in there performing. So stuff like that can like easily like there's so many people that are like dreams they have to like settle, compromise, and fail. And it's like that one of those competition things that like you have to like be able to persevere and like try to make it through.
Yeah, you have to be smart about it. That's the main thing. As like somebody with, morals that have set values, if you're going to go into any industry, whether anything with the arts, there's always those terms and conditions. There's always those like underlying meanings. You have to read your contract, you have to do it. As far as what you said about the Beatles, how they released like, the first couple songs that they might not have liked, I feel like that in a way is a necessity. Sometimes you do have to release things that you don't really like because those things could actually speak to somebody. So sometimes you have to just play the game. You have to just, get that out there because sometimes that's the song that people gravitate to. You're like, really, guys, this is you don't like this one? And so it's a strange thing, but it's good that they did that so that they could build a platform, because once you're respected as an artist, you can say what you want.
Right.
You just have to get through those first, couple stages.
Like, I feel like there's sometimes even in cases where like people listen and like it might not even be for that time.
Yeah.
Like for example, like MF Doom. Like MF Doom as a rapper, like did something so completely different that like while it got a lot of praise from like a lot of rappers, like a lot of people like usually he was known as being your favorite rapper's favorite rapper because of how good he was. But what he did was so left field that the general audience had a hard time picking that up. And it wasn't until a lot later, and sometimes to a certain degree almost post-mortem, that like people he really blew up, and now he's a household name.
That's actually very bleakly true. Like Little Peep and Mac Miller, they would hit like 20 million more streams after they passed away. And then the people were like, "Oh my god, I love this artist." I'm like, "Well, did you know they just passed away?" Or did you know? So it's just it takes time. It does, and that's kind of the crappy part. And it's just one of those things that it's just. I read this really morbid story, and it's this artist I really like, and they're from, I think it's Denmark, no, the Netherlands, and they had this really good album they put out, and all by himself, and took his life, like never went anywhere. They had a label that was like pulling on him, it was like Sony or somebody, and then as soon as that happened, their parents like initiated like, "Hey, you're going to get my son signed," and they did. And now that whole album streams so well on Spotify, and I just look back at that story, and I even made a playlist of like deceased artists because it just hits so. Because that was one of the things that brought me to it. I was like, life's so short. What am I doing? And part of you, it immortalizes yourself in that work. Like, what have you left behind in this world? And people can pick up a Nirvana album, or they can pick up Jimi Hendrix, his short, brief 4 years on stage, before he was out. And we still resonate today in 2024, all those years later.
Oh, 100%. I would say, definitely like Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, where you feel like these people, like, they were cut so short that like you definitely knew that like they were able to carry on and create a legend of themselves. Like some people just cut too short. I mean, did you guys ever have like a song that like really like resonated you with me? Because it's interesting you said with Mac Miller because his final album, I forgot there was even a music video for it, but it was so I can't think of the name. Huh?
It just hit deep.
Yeah, just like especially knowing that he passed away, really adds that extra layer, and like you really like you take it almost on a personal level.
Yeah.
You know, did you ever have a song that like from an artist that like really resonates with you?
I have to think about that. I think that honestly, any song like I love Ricky Nelson, I love Deanna and the Belmonts, and knowing that that was the way that they expressed their love for the person that they loved and cared about, it makes you feel it's not just a connection with the music, but it's a connection with the artist. When I listen to Queen, when I listen to Freddie Mercury, I'm like, oh my God, you made such an impact.
Yes.
Like the passion. If you can bring that to the table, oh, you can change lives. I do really love Mac Miller. And so I mean, when I listen to him, it's not just, wow, this music's really good. This is a great artist. It's you were struggling. Like you had that feeling because if you listen to some of his lyrics, it's kind of like he wished to be in the clouds. He was hinting at it almost. And I think that that is just
That's what hit me. Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's almost hard to listen to it because it's like, wow, you've made it so far. And that's like another thing with like my album that's coming out. It's supposed to recognize that kind of longing, like you're here now. Now what? What's the way out? And that's usually, death, but it's very unfortunate. But I would say, yeah, Ricky Nelson, Deanna and the Belmonts. Some old school people.
I would say Lil Peep's Star Shopping or Star Hopping, that song. A lot of his stuff resonates hard because he kind of paved the way for this, like almost how they call it, subgenre emo rap. And in that song, he talks about, he said, "You're so much more than perfect. You're so much more than gorgeous. Right now, everything's not perfect." And then he talks about, "If you just wait on me, I'll make it." And he talks about like to a girl, and that resonated really hard because I met my girlfriend in Nashville, and I just saw how some of these stories are so real. And that song hits really heavy too, because it's like we were living hard. Like I'd given everything, and I'm having to go back to work for different jobs now, and I'm like, damn, it was rough because we were just constantly both partying, but also just hanging out with Yellow Wolf's band and Jelly Roll's band and all these other big artists that would come through. And I just ran into Cage the Elephant and Bradley Schultz and his brother, and we're just talking outside this bar. We're just messed up. He's like, "Man, you're a good producer." I was like, "Dude, who the fuck are you?" He's like, "I'm Bradley Schultz, man. Cage the Elephant." And I was like, "What the fuck?" He literally ran out the door and fell, and I caught him in my arms. And we have this picture together. I just look at stories like that. I'm like, what the hell? Like, this life's been so fun and so cool. But that song by Lil Peep, it hits deep because he was at that point where he was doing something so different. That's how I feel with a lot of my music. People have been like, it's so different because I do everything myself. And people have compared it to like Tame Impala or like a sound of like Tiny Tim with this falsetto thing I do. And it's just like some people will resonate with so well, and they'll be like, "Man, I love that." Like in Nashville, they love the indie scene. But if I go out to places like Florida, other places, they're like, "The fuck is that? Like, what are you making?" But it's not about that. It's like I still remember the stories of people that came to me after my show, and they're like, "Man, that was so cool. What's the name of that song? Can you help me find it?" Like they were trying to find it on their Spotify, and that in itself was enough for me to say, "I want to keep going."
Like, how different is the music scene from Nashville versus like Florida?
Oh, so much different. And in Nashville, there is literally there's anywhere from 400 to 500 live music venues every Friday and Saturday that are open. And in East Nash, it is very indie, very alt, very all new artists that come through that will book out a house that's like $4,000 a month with a bunch of roommates, and they will make a band, and that's what we were doing. And it's so much different because here people just look at you and they're like, "What?" And even trying to do that little show we did at the Brass Mug here in Florida, it's very similar to how it is in East Nash, but there will be like 20 to 30 venues like that where you can book shows and become friends with managers, studio producers, BMI, It's just right down the road. So you can license your music and just really push to so many different levels just because you meet people and just be a good person. You don't need to be someone that's like, oh, it's all me, it's all me. They want to see how humble you are and that you've got talent. That will go so far.
Yeah, because if you collab with other artists and stuff, because no man is an island, right? I mean, no one. One of the biggest lies we were told is like someone's self-made. I don't believe anyone has ever been self-made.
No,
and that's the thing. Like when you make friends and connections, you hear their music and it inspires you to create something different. And that's how it is. Is we all learn from each other.
Yeah, and that's received so much better in Nashville than it is in Florida, from what I've seen. Like, and it's funny because you can play like. I had an ex-manager for like modeling and bodybuilding when I was in that phase of my life, and Levy Clive, I know you'll probably watch this, but I'll never forget sitting in your office and he was like, what is that song? It was The Less I Know, The Better by Tame Impala. He's like, I can barely hear the singer because he puts his vocals back with a lot of reverb. And I was like, dude, this song has 2 billion streams right now. How do you not know this song? He's like, well, I'm into that Beyonce Dua Lipa kick right now. I'm like, great. Well, this guy, it's like also hitting like triple whatever platinum on these albums. You don't know them.
Yeah.
And he was not about it. And I was like, but what?
It's interesting just because how big the music market is that there could be things that like have 100 and 200 million views and you'll just never hear about them. Like, but there's people who have never heard of them.
No.
Yeah.
That's how big we are now in the music industry. Like for you guys, since you guys are like established, do you guys have like advice for someone who's like curious about it but like doesn't know where to start?
With music?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not that established.
I would say established. I wouldn't even say I'm established. I'm not gonna hold that. Like, I wouldn't even say I'm established when I can provide for my family, and with just music, I would say that. I don't know. Yeah. It depends on how you say established, because I don't know.
Well, you've been doing it for a while, right?
Yeah.
So someone who's like, let's just say they never picked up an instrument.
Okay.
They've had this want and need, but like they just they're kind of like self-conscious about it. Like, what do you do? Like, how do you tell them to get started and what do they need to go?
Gee, I've had friends like that who want to get into music, and honestly, I would say just do it.
Just do it.
Just put the Nike logo.
Yeah, you can check that right here. But yeah, you have to go for it. Music is a mystery. It's something to be uncovered. It's something that you can dive into. It's almost like a religion in a way for you to find more and more faith with it and just uncover it. So once you do get into music, because people love it, you can listen to it all day. Yes. Those are the people who have it always playing in the background. Like, that's me. I have to have something there. And it's a beautiful thing if you get into it, and you have to recognize that. You have to have the determination. If you're going to if you want to make it far with music, that is a long path, and you have to be there for it. You have to be ready. But it does take time. So I would have to say you have to recognize what you're going to do with it. You have to almost have a goal and work towards that goal if you want to be successful. If you just want to start playing, pick up your guitar. This is how you do the C chord. This is how you do the G chord. I mean, there you guys go. There's your tutorial. And it's just, I feel like I don't have any kids, nor am I married. So when I do have children eventually, I want them to have the ability to play instruments. I want to give that to them because no pressure. They can do what they want. But when they have their passions and everything, I think that music is just such an important thing. It's almost like dancing. I love to dance. I compete in the country western scene, and I've been doing it for a while, just started competing, and it's another art form. It's something that really just gives you an experience, a life experience, because we can have doctors, we can have lawyers, we can have accountants, we can have all of that, but we also need
someone
artists.
to out yeehaw the other person who dance.
Out yeehaw, honestly, yeah. So if you have some creative drive in you, if you have something that you're like, whoa, I don't think anybody else might have this, or some people rarely have this gift, you have to exploit it. You have to keep going. If it's just like an ounce, we have musicians that are famous that are on all different levels. So you have to try your luck.
Right.
That's the big
So
thing.
the question is, what would be the advice for someone coming into the market right now?
Yeah, because essentially, like, it's just like for people that, like, as we know, there's so many people out here and doing music. It's kind of hard to almost find like your original voice and your original take on music. So what would
My advice would be, don't listen to other people. And that's going to be hard because everyone's going to be like, oh, you're songing like this. And don't even fucking just put it all away. You are the artist. And at the end of the day, doing what you love is what's going to make your art where it should be. Phil Collins was 33 before he had his first big hit. Yes. 33. And that Tarzan soundtrack is something different. I don't care what you say. I would say go in, learn how to produce a little bit of music. You need to have some way to throw in a mixtape or something that you can throw in some keys, some guitar, some bass, some kicks, some snare, something to make a song sound somewhat close to what you want the final product to be. Get to where you can do that, and then learn at least one instrument really good, because all instruments will follow suit. They will. Like, you can be like Prince or do like I do and do everything yourself as far as the instruments go, because then that cuts down the middleman. But if you've got money, then go that route. Whatever. If you've got money, but at the same time, keep as creative as you can.
Because it's hard to get people into instruments, because now a lot of people want to just do it straight electronically and just get samples and sounds. But you feel like you get something different when you play like from an instrument?
100%, because when I first started doing this, like I said, I was going into electronic, and you'll hear like my song like New Water, it's drum and bass. You'll hear my songs off my Elemental album, and they're all very electronic based, and they have good composition. But you look at my first album, I don't know what the fuck that was. It was just a random.
There was something.
Some electronic stuff, a little bit of vocals, because I was nervous about doing the vocals. But now I look at the stuff I'm putting out now, and I'm like, what? And that's something I do now. Is like, there will be a point for the new artist. You'll be able to look at your future projects, compare it to your old projects, and be like, holy
see
shit,
that growth.
You will see the growth, and that's important. So just always keep at it and don't quit.
Yeah,
that's my advice.
Never quit.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Is it this one or that one?
It's whatever one you feel like it is. Okay, that's all. So anyway, thank you guys so much for showing up. If you guys have any plugs, feel free to put them in right now.
On Instagram, I'm at Iliana._.Lambe, and also on TikTok.
I am Gasp Jesse, Gasp Jesse, on Spotify, on Instagram. It's all the same. So.
Guys, thank you much for listening and for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yes.